welcome to Elements of Ayurveda, Empowering Wisdom of Life. I'm your host, Colette, and in this podcast, I hope to empower you to take charge of your own health by sharing the holistic teachings of Ayurveda, the ancient healing tradition from India. We will also discuss topics like health and wellness, nutrition, yoga, fitness, meditation, breath work, and much more, as well as interviewing lots of inspiring people along the way. My humble wish is to help you to connect to your true nature, to Mother Nature, and to each other. If you like the content, be sure to subscribe to the show, and the new episodes will automatically download for you to enjoy. If you're new to Ayurveda, I recommend you listen to the first couple of episodes where I do an introduction to Ayurveda and the mind-body types. I've also set up a Facebook group for us to connect and to support each other, and I'd love for you to join me over at Elements of Ayurveda podcast group. And now, here's the show. Hi there, and welcome to today's episode, What Do I Eat? We all know this frustration because there's so much information out there now. There's so many different diets on the market that it can get really confusing. And I remember when I was starting back in the health and fitness industry and really taking care of my eating back in the early 2000s, I was so confused about what to eat. And I went to see a nutritionist and they talked to me about fats and carbohydrates and proteins and the different amount of grams. And I'm not a numbers person, so I found this really confusing and it just seemed very, very difficult. And it wasn't until I found Ayurveda that it was like, aha, this is simplistic, this is logical, this I can wrap my brain around, rather than trying to figure out all the different food groups and if I was getting the right food groups and the right amount, etc. And when I went to see Dr. Sujata in Bali and, thought I was eating healthily and proudly said, oh yes, I eat muesli with some yogurt and some fruit, thinking I thought this was very healthy. And she just turned to me and said, well, that's possibly one of the worst things you could eat. Then I knew I had a lot to learn. So I want to share with you today about Ayurveda's approach to nutrition, about the taste of Ayurveda and about food combining and some general guidelines, fantastic guidelines that Ayurveda gives us with food. So hopefully that I can share what I learned through Ayurveda. And like I said, it's logical, it's simplistic, and it can help answer that question about what do I eat? The first thing I want to do here is look at Ayurvedic nutrition versus conventional nutrition and look at the differences. So let's look at, why do we eat? In conventional nutrition, it could be personal preference, it could be habit, it could be because of body image, we're choosing certain foods, or there could be an emotional component to it. Whereas in Ayurvedic nutrition, it's all about taking prana or life force into the body. It's all about taking in prana from good prana-rich foods. And prana is that energy, that life force that's going to help us have vitality and have zest for life. When it comes to nutritional element in conventional nutrition, it looks at calories. Whereas in Ayurveda, we look at the 5 elements and the qualities. So each food has an elemental composition. The elements of air, space, fire, water, and earth appear in the foods, therefore giving each food a certain quality and therefore a certain effect on our body, our doshas. The focus in conventional nutrition is on counting calories from the different food groups. Whereas in Ayurveda, it's all about how our body processes what we eat. And we know that Ayurveda focuses on the digestion because in Ayurveda, we don't say you are what you eat, but you are what you digest. So in Ayurveda, it's said that undigested food is the bedrock for all disease. And it's undigested food which causes the ama or toxins in our body, which can lead to a lot of problems down the road. The importance in conventional nutrition is on caloric value, Whereas in Ayurveda, it's on the individual constitution. So it's important for each person to understand their unique mind-body type and the ratio of Vata, Pitta, and Kapha in their constitution. That's why I always encourage everyone to get an in-depth constitutional consultation. You know, the dosha quizzes are great as an initial stepping stone, but it's very important to do an in-depth consultation where an Ayurvedic expert can help determine your unique mind-body type, can help you understand what you should be eating, understand your tendencies of imbalance, and give you balancing foods to help you bring you back into balance when you go out of balance. So again, I highly recommend that. Now, the balance of conventional nutrition is talking about balancing different food ingredients, whereas in Ayurvedic nutrition, it's all about balancing the diet according to your constitution. So it's all individualized. There's no one size fits all. Dietary recommendations in conventional nutrition, it depends on the food groups, whereas in Ayurvedic nutrition, it depends on the taste of the food. And we're going to go into detail on the 6 tastes of Ayurveda today, which is really interesting. Now, Ayurveda doesn't talk about food groups or the grams of fat, protein, and carbs, etc. Figuring out the best food for you starts with determining your unique constitution, the ratio of Vata, Pitta, Kapha. And this logical approach is individualized rather than a one-size-fits-all approach. Every food has its own taste and energy. Maybe it could be heating or cooling. And it also has a different effect on the doshas of Vata, Pitta, Kapha, which is so interesting. And we're going to start by looking at the taste today. So in Ayurveda, it said that there's 6 tastes, and taste, or rasa, is the sensation that the tongue experiences. The action of each taste is because of its elemental composition, meaning what elements are in each taste. And it could be air, space, fire, water, and earth. They're the 5 elements, the 5 pancha mahabhutas in Ayurveda. To maintain dosha balance and for proper functioning of all of the body, all the 6 tastes should be consumed. So that's the ideal. When we're in balance, we're consuming all 6 tastes. And then that has to be modified when we're out of balance. So we'll talk about that as well. Ayurveda describes 6 tastes by sweet, sour, salty, bitter, pungent, and astringent. Each one of these tastes has a different effect in the body, and understanding this effect of the taste on your particular dosha or constitution can really help you in maintaining balance and aid in healing if imbalanced. Every substance is made up of some combination of the 5 elements. As we go through the taste now, you'll see that the Ayurvedic principle of like increases like and opposites balance also comes into play here. So let's start, first of all, with the sweet taste. The sweet taste is made up of the elements of earth and water. Now, what effect does it have on the body? Well, it has a nourishing effect. It builds and strengthens the tissues. It helps the body to feel grounded. It nourishes the senses. It also stimulates saliva, improves circulation. It strengthens the heart. It can act as a mild laxative sometimes. It relieves thirst and heartburn. The sweet taste is excellent in moderation to bring stability, grounding, and vitality, and particularly great for Pitta and Vata. It helps to balance those doshas, and you can particularly see for Vata, because sweet is grounding and it can help ground that energy of Vata, which is made up of air and space. And then it can help cool Pitta because it helps relieve that heartburn. So the sweet taste is excellent in moderation to bring stability, grounding, and vitality. However, too much can cause excess tissues, leading to obesity. It can also cause sluggishness and lethargy. Therefore, it can aggravate kapha. So kapha, we know, is made up of earth and water. So too much of that sweet taste can be very aggravating to kapha. Now, let me give you an example of what is this sweet taste. Well, of course, it's sweet fruits like bananas and peaches, anything that's really sweet to taste. Grains are also considered sweet in Ayurveda. So too is pasta, root and starchy vegetables, meat, chicken, fish, maple syrup, and dates. So all those are considered sweet. Now we move on to sour. The sour taste is made up of earth and fire. It stimulates acid secretions, it enhances the appetite, and it aids digestion. It also helps to reduce gas, increases circulation, and it works as an anticoagulant and sharpens the senses. And it can really be great, as you can imagine, for Vata, because it's all about increasing the acid secretions. It's all about aiding digestion. So we know that Vata has an irregular digestive system. So that sour taste is excellent for increasing and balancing Vata. However, it can aggravate Kapha and Pitta, because too much sourness can be too much heat for Pitta and cause water retention and heaviness for Kapha. So we have to be mindful of what taste we're taking into our daily nutrition and think about, and really I encourage you just to have awareness about what its effect is having on your body. So rather than trying to memorize all this, it's about, well, how does this feel in my body? How do I feel after having these tastes in my food? So let me give you some samples of the sour taste. Sour fruits. So it could be like a sour apple, maybe that's not so sweet, or sour berries, maybe like a raspberry could be considered sour. Also pineapple, tomatoes, pickled or fermented foods, yogurt, alcohol, vinegar, and cheese also is considered sour. Now let's look at the next one, which is salty. Salty is made up of the elements of water and fire. Salt taste can help strengthen the digestive fire and the electrolyte balance in the body. It can also act as a laxative, a sedative, and reduce stiffness, hardness, and removes any blockages. It is very calming to the nervous system and therefore very calming to Vata and can help relieve spasms in the body. Now, salt can also increase thirst and can help vitiate the blood also. In moderation, it gives energy, it promotes growth, and it also helps with water retention. So as we said, it's very good for Vata because it tends to hold on to moisture in the body and helps to stimulate digestion. However, salt tends to be too heating for Pitta, and for Kapha, it's good for the warmth, but in excess, water can be aggravating, as too much can lead to hypertension, edema, swelling, and water retention in the body. So we have to be careful with that salt if you're Kapha and Pitta dominant dosha, but for Vata, it's very calming and helps to hold on to the water in the body. So obviously salt is all salts. It could also be soy sauce, salted meats and fish, seaweeds, and salted nuts. Now, you know, I highly recommend the Himalayan pink salt, which has over 85 different minerals in it. So if you are using salt, a little is good for Kapha and Pitta. You have to be careful how much salt you use. So coming up, starting May 10th, is my Daily Habits for a Holistic Health course. It's a 4-week online course that's self-guided, and this course helps you implement a routine of healthy habits to create a foundation of holistic health. These daily self-care practices are going to help keep the body and mind in balance, aid digestion, calm the nervous system, prevent illness, and promote health and well-being. Now, it's not only important to have daily habits, but we really need to make sure we're doing these habits at the right time of day that are in sync with the circadian rhythm. And science is now proving that this is the case. There's a certain time we should be eating. There's a certain time we should be exercising. There's a certain time we should be sleeping in order to get the full benefit of these functions. So I hope you can join me for this course. Like I said, this group 1 is starting May 10th. And it's at a reduced price. And we're not going to only cover the self-care habits and the routines. I'm going to help you implement them. But also we're going to talk in depth about the circadian rhythms, about the different mental qualities. We're going to talk about the foundation of Ayurvedic healer, so I can encourage you to become your own healer. We're also going to talk a lot more about intuition and compassion and positivity and how it impacts your health and well-being. In this course, you'll receive access to my private course page on my website with daily coaching webinars. We'll also get worksheets, you'll get support from me, and we'll also have a community in our Facebook group. So I hope you can join me starting May 10th. So I'm going to put a link in the show notes, but you can also head over to my website, elementshealingandwellbeing.com/daily habits course to secure your space on the course. Okay, I hope you can join us there. Okay, let's move on to the next taste, which is pungent. Now, pungent is made up of the elements of fire and air. The pungent taste helps digestion, it reduces congestion, and is also drying to the body. It can help with absorption, therefore that's where the drying comes in, improves circulation, it can help relieve pain and muscle tension, and it also works as an anticoagulant. It cleanses the mouth, it raises the body temperature, it promotes sweating, it dries wounds, it reduces excess fluids. And in moderation, it helps digestion, circulation, and helps dissolve fat. So the pungent taste, as you can imagine, with all that drying effect and all that heating, it helps to balance kapha. However, in excess, it can be aggravating to Pitta because obviously it's too much heat, and to Vata if it's in excess, because it can cause inflammation, irritation, can cause ulcers, diarrhea, heartburn, and possible nausea. So very aggravating for Pitta, and for Vata it can be too much because it has that drying effect on the body, and Vata already has a lot of that air and space in the body, so it can be too drying sometimes. So caution there. Now let's look at the pungent taste samples. Well, pungent is peppers, chilies, ground ginger, black pepper, cloves, cayenne pepper, garlic, wasabi, mustard, radishes, raw onions, garlic, turnips, like salsa, anything that has that spicy taste can be considered pungent. Okay, so now let's look at, before we go on to it, the next taste, I am going to provide you with a download of this chart so that you can have it on hand and refer to it. So the next taste is astringent. Astringent is made up of the elements of air and earth. Now astringent, it's a weird one for us to try to get our head around, but basically it's anything you put into your mouth and it draws the water out of your mouth. So astringent is very drying. It's cooling. It can help to stop the bleeding in the body and flow. And think of a classic way that it stops the bleeding. In India, they will use turmeric with a little bit of water or oil and put on a wound, and it will stop any bleeding straight away. So it's like the almost like a natural Band-Aid for the body. The reason it does that is because it constricts blood vessels and promotes healing. It can also act as an antidiuretic, antibiotic, antibacterial, and homeostatic, and can also, because it has this drying effect, it can cause constipation. But it also improves the skin texture. We know that things like turmeric is used a lot on the skin for mass in Ayurveda. It improves absorption. It's an anti-inflammatory, the astringent taste, decongestion, and as I said earlier, it promotes clotting. However, in excess, it can cause constipation, gripping sensations in the intestines, and a stagnation of circulation, too drying. So think about it. What is it going to aggravate? Well, we know Vata has a tendency towards dryness when imbalanced. So it's going to aggravate Vata, but it's very balancing for Kapha and Pitta. So let's look at those astringent tastes now. So samples of the astringent, I talked about turmeric already, lentils, dried beans, green apples, cranberries, grape skins, pomegranate, leafy green vegetables are considered astringent. So too is broccoli and cauliflower. We know broccoli and cauliflower, those cruciferous vegetables, are aggravating to Vata as it is because they cause a lot of gas in the body. Also, things like astringent would also be like rice cakes, popcorn. Because they have no moisture in them, they're going to take the dryness. They have that drying quality because they're going to need moisture to digest. And also black tea is very astringent as well. So that's the astringent taste, which brings us to our last taste, which is bitter. Now, bitter is made up of air and space. And the bitter effect on the body is cooling. It causes lightness. It's antibacterial and antiviral. It purifies the blood. It detoxifies the body. And it actually works as an antibiotic. It reduces fever. It absorbs excess fat, oiliness, and fluids. It opens up the channels of the body and reduces the body temperature and works as a liver tonic. So you can already guess that it's going to be balancing for Pitta because it reduces that heat of Pitta. It's antibacterial and antiviral, and it helps to reduce fat and toxins in the body. So excellent for Pitta and Kapha because it helps to reduce the fat in the body, and it opens up the channels of the body because we know Kapha can get that stagnation and sluggishness. However, it can be aggravating to Vata because in excess, it will deplete the tissues and it may cause emaciation, fatigue, dizziness, and extreme dryness. And these are already tendencies of Vata constitution when it's imbalanced. So having a lot of the bitter taste in your diet is going to cause that increases in the body and cause excess of that dryness, that emaciation, that loss of tissues. So let's look at examples of the bitter taste. Coffee is bitter. So too are green leafy vegetables like kale, dandelion, collard greens, celery, broccoli, sprouts, neem, which is an Ayurvedic or an Indian leaf, is considered bitter. So too is aloe vera. Fenugreek, which we discussed in our spice episode, is also considered bitter, and so too is what's a vegetable called bitter melon as well. So these are all bitter tastes. So you can see that those food items are going to be aggravating to Vata, but they're going to help balance Kapha and Pitta. So that's the 6 tastes. And, overall, I know it's a lot of information. I'm going to give you that simple chart so you can review it. You can download it. Just check out the show notes. And again, having awareness is key. You don't have to memorize this. You don't have to become obsessed with this, but just have awareness around this and how these taste. What taste do you have in your food? And just have more of a relationship between the taste and the effect on their body. It's really eye-opening. So just to review, that when we're in balance, when our body and mind is in balance, we should have a combination of all 6 tastes in the food. However, when we're out of balance, we should favor certain tastes. And let me just review that for you. So when a Vata person is out of balance, when there's excess Vata, when there's a weak digestive fire, and they're prone to maybe indigestion, excessive gas, bloating, constipation, malabsorption, that's when you should favor more the sweet, sour, and salty tastes and avoid the bitter, pungent, and astringent tastes. For Pitta, when there's excess Pitta in the body, which causes excess heat and can lead to acid indigestion, hyperacidity, heartburn, maybe skin infections, diarrhea, then we need to bring in more sweet, astringent, and bitter tastes and avoid pungent, sour, and salty tastes. And finally, for Kapha, when Kapha is imbalanced and gets that slow digestion, slow digestive fire, when there is lethargy, when there's a tamasic quality to the body, like there's no feeling of get up and go, when everything is just slowing down, there might be a foggy mind. That's when you want to look towards favoring more pungent, astringent, and bitter to help you bring you back into balance, and avoiding sweet, sour, and salty. So I hope that helps. Again, you don't have to memorize exactly everything, but just have awareness around how you feel in your body, what tastes are your go-to tastes in the day, and what effect those tastes are having on your body and mind. So now let's look at how each taste affects our mind and emotions. So the sweet taste that we talked about, just a reminder, it can aggravate Kapha, but is balancing to Pitta and Vata. On a subtle level, it enhances the vital essence in the body, what we call doshas, that last few drops of immunity in our body, which when extinguished, we pass away. So doshas is our vital, our last source of immunity. And the sweet taste also promotes feelings of love and well-being and compassion and satisfaction. However, in excess, this feeling can become complacency and inertia, that feeling of no get up and go. So there can be more of that tamasic quality in the body. There can also be attachment to possessions and people if we have too much of the sweet taste, and it can lead to congestion in the body, lethargy, heaviness, and like we said earlier, obesity. So again, a certain amount of the sweet taste for Pitta and Vata can bring in that compassion, that satisfaction, that love, that vital essence. But again, overindulgence can lead to too much heaviness in the body and the mind. Now the sour taste, just as a reminder, the sour is balancing to Vata, but aggravating to Kapha and Pitta. The action on the mind is that it helps with comprehension and stimulation. It enlivens the mind. It can really help to bring clarity to situations. However, in excess, it can cause envy, jealousy, anger, and it can cause people to be over-judgmental and over-critical perhaps, and that feeling of sour grapes. The salty taste, again, which is balancing to Vata, but aggravating to Kapha and Pitta. The action on the mind is that of confidence and zest for life. Emotionally, salty taste enhances the flavors and variety of life. It sparks our interest and builds our confidence and courage. However, in excess, it can create Kapha disorders of greed, possessiveness, and attachment, again, to people or things. The pungent taste, again, is balancing to Kapha, but aggravating to Pitta and Vata. And psychologically, the pungent taste promotes enthusiasm and clarity of perception, also promotes extroversion and boldness. But in excess, it can cause anger, violence, hatred, and irritability, envy, and jealousy. So too much of those pungent tastes in the body can have a really negative effect on the mind and go into that rajasic mindset. So we have to be careful of how much of these tastes we're having. The astringent taste, we now know, is balancing to Kapha and Pitta, but aggravating to Vata. And the action on the mind is grounding, and it can help with organization, but too much can cause insecurity, fear, and anxiety. And those are Vata type imbalances. Can also cause a nervousness and a scattered mind. That's why astringent, that drying taste, is very aggravating to Vata. Finally, we have bitter. And the bitter taste, as just a reminder, is balancing to Kapha and Pitta, but aggravating to Vata. And the action on the mind is introspection and clarity. An individual will be able to see reality more clearly. However, in excess, it can lead to isolation, grief, and loneliness. So here we talked about what happens when we overindulge in these tastes. Now let's look at the opposite when we have too little of these tastes. So too little of each of these tastes. For sweet, too little of the sweet can cause weak tissues and debility, because remember, the sweet taste increases Kapha and helps to build and strengthen the tissues. So too little is going to have the opposite effect and weaken the tissues. Sour taste increases Kapha and Pitta. As a reminder, it stimulates the acid secretions and aids digestion, but too little will cause an acid imbalance. The salty taste increases Kapha and Pitta and can help maintain the electrolyte balance in the body, but too little salt can affect our water balance, so it can cause a water imbalance in the body. The pungent taste increases Pitta and Vata, and can really help with digestion, absorption, and improve circulation. But too little of this taste weakens digestion, and it can cause poor circulation and cold extremities. The astringent taste increases the Vata, we now know. It can constrict the blood vessels and stop bleeding and flow. But if there's too little of the astringent taste, it can cause excessive discharge in the body. So again, we think of the principle of like increases like, opposites balance. If we have a lot of excessive discharge from the body, we want to bring in more astringent taste because we want to dry up those excess discharges. Then the bitter taste increases Vata. Remember, it purifies the blood, it detoxifies the body, it works as an antibiotic, antiseptic, and reduces fever. But too little can cause an accumulation of the toxins in the body. As you can see here, the taste obviously is important and has a direct effect on our bodily doshas. Now, I don't want you to feel overwhelmed by this. And I know I've said this numerous times, so I really don't want you to feel overwhelmed, because this is just the start of drawing awareness around the taste. Tune into your body, bring awareness, and tune into the mind also, and see how you're feeling and after eating certain foods. And from there, make decisions on how much of each taste to have. At first, it can seem challenging, but over time, it will become second nature and intuitive. But this is where you need to have self-compassion and patience as you start to educate yourself. And again, it's about progress. You don't want to or need to be perfect here and have it all down. You just start experimenting with your food. And just, again, bringing in that principle of like increases like and opposites balance. But the awareness is the key. The awareness and the education is the key. So now we're finished with taste. I want to move on to the guidelines that Ayurveda gives us for what to eat, right? This is what the show is about. What should I eat? So let's go through some of these great guidelines, but I can't give specifics because there's no one size fits all. So for that, I recommend an individual consultation. I provide them online. We can do them from anywhere in the world on Skype or FaceTime, or I'll give you a free Zoom link. And we can do those online, and I can help you, educate you on your particular mind-body type, on your doshas, on your tendencies towards imbalance, and tell you exactly what foods are best for you when you're out of balance. When you're in balance, you should be able to have all foods in moderation. But it's really the key to understanding your tendencies, your signs of imbalance in your body and mind. And then I will give you a balancing food list for those times. I'll also give you information on what foods are best for you to have, to focus on, and what to avoid. So let's look, first of all, here at the importance of food according to Ayurveda. Well, we talked about earlier, food is prana. Food has life force. Now, raw food does indeed have more prana. However, Ayurveda believes that food should be cooked because most people have weak digestion and cannot access this prana in raw food. So it is best to cook your food slightly to make it more easy for the body to digest. Now, food provides the building blocks that create the new cells and tissues in our body. So what we take in is going to become literally our cells and tissues. The dhatus, or tissues, dhatus is the Sanskrit word for tissues, are reservoirs of energy that are constantly being built and broken down to utilize this energy. Therefore, replenishing healthy dhatus or tissues with prana-rich food is essential. If you want to have good energy, we need to be mindful about what goes in our mouth and how we're digesting it. Food nourishes not only the body, but the mind and the soul. We know it energizes the mind, and it helps if we're eating right, if we're in balance. It means we can get that soul guidance. Our subtle channels are clear, and we're getting that intuition and that guidance from our soul. Strength, energy, mental clarity, radiance, immunity, sharpness of the senses all depend on the food that we eat. And the diet is critical to disease also. Unhealthy or inappropriate food choices can easily become the cause of disease in the body and the mind. Making healthy food choices or eating the right foods can reverse this and serve as a treatment to disease. And there's a quote by Dr. Koop that says, "No disease can be cured unless supplemented by the right diet. 90% of the diseases can be prevented by the right diet alone." 90%. And that's a quote from Dr. Koop. So now let's look at Ayurveda's guidelines for eating. Well, first of all, we need to know our mind-body type, right? So that's important. I've talked about that already. You can start with a dosha quiz, but I highly recommend an in-depth consultation. And then consider how you're feeling. Check in with your body. How do I feel today? Do I feel spacey and ungrounded? Or do I feel heavy? Or do I feel hot? Or do I feel cold? Then consider the type of food that you want. Remember, like increases like and opposites balance. So maybe if you're feeling heavy, you're going to eat lighter foods. Maybe if you're feeling light, you want some more nourishing, grounding foods with that sweet taste. If you're feeling heated, well, you want some cooling foods that have cooling qualities, avoiding the pungent tastes. So again, really checking in how you're feeling, and also consider the time of day that you're eating. Remember that in Ayurveda, we recommend that you eat your main meal at the middle of the day when your digestive fire is strongest, between 12 and 1:30. Eating breakfast around 7 to 8:30, a lighter breakfast, and then dinner, the evening meal, should be a light meal before 7 p.m. Eating only after the previous food is digested and only when you feel hungry, and this particularly for the Kapha dosha. Now, for Vata, you may have a tendency towards forgetting to eat, particularly when you're out of balance. So routine in meals is necessary for Vata dosha, or if you're imbalanced in the Vata dosha. However, for Kapha, if you have a tendency towards heaviness and sluggishness, waiting until you feel that real sign of hunger before you eat is important. Taking a moment to give gratitude before eating. So taking your meal away from the computer, turning off the TV, making sure don't have too much sensory stimulation, eating the meal in quietness, and before you eat it, just take a moment and giving thanks for it. And really concentrating on your food is important. Of course, not eating too fast. Take time to chew your food is important, particularly for those high in Pitta constitution. Tendency is to eat very fast, so just trying to slow down because we want to make sure that we're digesting that food properly. Remember, undigested food is the cause for ama or toxic buildup in the body. And eat in a calm, pleasant environment. Set your place, even if you're eating by yourself. Make a nice environment to eat in. Eat food to half your capacity. Drink water to a quarter of your capacity, and leaving room for the food to move in the stomach for digestion. So when you push away from the table, you should not be feeling heavy and have to go lie on the couch because you just overate, but you should be able to, breathe easily and talk and walk easily and just feel satisfied without feeling too heavy. And eating heavy and sweet foods less in quantity. Eat light foods to fill your stomach first. So maybe starting off with a soup. So it's all really about a self-study. In Ayurveda, you get the education and then you start to study yourself. That's what I did. I got educated, and then it's all about trial and error and studying and just having that awareness and to note how you feel after eating, and not only directly after eating, but also the next day. How do you feel the next morning? Do you feel clear in the mind and have energy, or do you feel heavy and have a foggy mind? Tune into your body, and over time, this will become a habit and give you the confidence to make your own decisions. And as well, it's very important to stay hydrated. Hydration is very important. Hydrating throughout the day with room temperature or hot water. And Ayurveda recommends having a glass upon waking. So ideally, having a hot water upon waking. I recommend the lemon water. And having a glass also an hour before your lunch or dinner is great as well. And this water should be either hot or at room temperature, avoiding cold or iced water, because this will help in detox and elimination. It keeps the skin supple. And sipping water to your meal, you want to avoid large amounts of water during your meal because this will affect digestion. So you don't want to be gulping the water during your meal, but just sipping on some hot water during your meal can aid digestion. Now, the water requirements differ for each dosha. For Vata, you need the most because you have a tendency towards dryness. So 6 to 8 glasses per day is good. For Pitta, about 5 to 6 glasses per day is enough. But for Kapha, I know most Kapha constitutions that I talk to, they have a hard time taking on water, and that's because you already have a lot of water. Maybe if you're imbalanced, you tend to retain water. So about 4 to 5 glasses per day is good. Sipping on water throughout the day, you could even have some herbal teas, and that would help also. So for Kapha and Vata, I recommend sipping on hot water or hot herbal teas. And then for Pitta, you could do room temperature if the hot is too much. So again, very important to stay hydrated. Now, choosing the right foods. Let's talk about this before we go into food combination. Ayurvedic eating is not generalized, it's person specific, as I keep saying. But you want to eat according to your age and your body constitution. Now, children will obviously require more food than elders because they're growing and they're building tissues and they need a lot more food. So I can give generalizations here for each dosha, but again, I highly recommend a consultation. Vata requires 3 meals per day as routine, and that's very important for Vata. It's very grounding. So making sure that you're eating at the same time every day, and this helps prevent the anxiety that can come with lack of eating or with lack of routine. Pitta is ideal for Pitta is a vegetarian diet. And Pitta has a strong digestive fire, so a person high in Pitta constitution generally doesn't forget to eat. In fact, they might need some supplemental snacks in between their meals, and that's fine because they have a strong digestion. And for Kapha, the guideline would be to eat only when you're hungry and eat lighter foods, especially in the evening. Now, what I always say is eat the soul food diet. Soul standing for seasonal, organic, unprocessed, and local. And that's the best mantra that you can take away today. Soul food diet. So eating a fresh, local diet with seasonal vegetables, organic where possible. And nature provides us with what we need in season to balance our bodies. And this is what we want to live by. Just go to those farmers markets and see what's in season and choose that. And that's the best and easiest way to make sure that you're eating the right foods for your body.
Eat freshly cooked and warm food that's easier to digest. Again, we talked about how raw food can be very hard for people to digest, particularly for those high Vata constitution, because you have that irregular digestive fire, and also for the Kapha, which can have a slow or low digestive fire. So raw food can be problematic to digest for those high in a Vata and Kapha constitution. Eat food which has enough oil and is moist enough. Obviously not fried food, but you want to make sure that you have some good fats in there. It tastes better, it helps the digestive fire, and it helps build the tissues and increase the strength in the body. And again, this is in particular for Vata. You want to make sure you have lots of good fats. During times of difficulty with digestion, avoid cruciferous vegetables like broccoli and cauliflower, Brussels sprouts and cabbage, because they produce more gas, again, specifically for the Vata constitution. And also avoiding fried foods, and that would really aggravate Pitta, and heavy sweets, which would really aggravate Kapha. So during those times of difficulty digesting, eat easy digestible warm foods like soups or khichdi, to lighten the load on the digestive system. Add fresh ginger and black pepper to your food to increase the digestive fire. And we talked about these spices in my spice episode a couple of weeks ago. So check out that episode all about spices. And do not eat food in the wrong combination. And so this is what I'm going to talk about now. Combining food. Ayurveda gives us guidelines on food combining, as it is an essential part of nourishing our body correctly, improving digestion, and allowing us to enjoy life and have vitality for life. Combining foods inappropriately can result in bloating, excessive gas, indigestion, fermentation. It can alter the bowel movements, and it can also create ama or toxins in the body. So I'm going to go through some incompatible foods right now. And I recommend drawing awareness around your food combinations and how you feel after a meal. Like, did it digest well, or was there some indigestion? And, it's funny because many of us don't even realize, I think today, how much indigestion we have. When I talk to clients and I ask them, do you have indigestion? And many say no. But then when I delve deeper and I start asking questions like, oh yeah, I guess I do have excessive gas and I have that heartburn. And then it's like, well, they ask, well, what is indigestion? Because many people take over-the-counter medications to deal with it. And it has become common for people to have bloating and excessive gas and heartburn. And this is a sign of that the body's not happy. It could be due to poor food choices or poor food combinations, all of which I'm going to help you with now. So this is a chart, again, I'm going to link in the show notes, but I'm going to go through it. And the first one is beans. Now, beans do not combine well with fruit, with cheese. When you think of cheese and beans, that's a lot in Mexican food, right? Also doesn't combine well with milk, yogurt, eggs, meat, or fish. Now, maybe you've been eating these things and you're thinking, I seem to digest them pretty well. Yes, the body, I think, if you're eating these poor combinations for a long time, maybe the body will deal with it and you won't have the same effects if there's somebody, that goes and eats beans and cheese for the first time and they instantly feel bloated and feel lots of excessive gas and just feel bad after it. But it doesn't, because your body's used to it, doesn't necessarily mean that it's good for your body. So again, drawing awareness. The next food is eggs. Eggs are incompatible with fruit, especially melons, beans, cheese, fish, especially milk, and yogurt. Now, eggs are especially incompatible with milk, fruit, in particular melons, beans, cheese, fish, meat, and yogurt. So think about it. How many combinations are you doing incorrectly in your diet right now? And the next time, if you do have eggs and milk together or eggs and fruit together, just see how it feels after you eat that meal. And that awareness can be the catalyst to change. Fruit. In Ayurveda, we recommend that you eat fruit on its own. That fruit digests at a different rate from other foods, and if you eat fruit with other foods, it can cause a fermentation in the body. So if you eat a meal and then you have a piece of fruit after your meal, the fruit is sitting there behind all that heavier food, because fruit has a tendency towards a higher water content. So it's sitting there fermenting, and it can cause a lot of digestive discomfort. Now, there are exceptions where things like dates and milk, Ayurveda says that's an okay combination, and some cooked combinations are okay. Like if you add some dried fruits with some, in some cooked breads, or if you're soaking things overnight with dried fruits, that's okay. But for the most part, if you're eating a fruit that has a lot of water in it, then you should eat it alone. Lemon is the next food. So lemon does not combine well with cucumber, milk, tomatoes, or yogurt. Melons. So melons in particular, Ayurveda says it's best eaten alone, and it especially doesn't combine well with dairy, eggs, fried food, grains, and starches. So melons have a high water content, again, best eaten alone. Grains do not combine well with fruit. Milk does not combine well with bananas in particular. Dairy can be mucus forming, and bananas can be mucus forming too. So the two together can cause a lot of congestion, particularly for cough in the body. Milk also does not combine well with cherries, melons, sour fruits, yeasted breads, eggs, yogurt, meat, fish, and vegetables. So that's a long list there for milk. So milk can be challenging to digest. And of course, in my consultations, I recommend looking at other alternatives for milk, like coconut milk, almond milk, hemp, rice. There's lots of other varieties out there now. And I do recommend looking at other varieties of milk, plant-based milks or nut milks, because we don't know. The milk isn't as pure as it used to be. Let me just leave it at that. The next food is cheese. Now, cheese does not combine well with fruit, beans, eggs, milk, yogurt, and hot drinks. Yogurt does not combine well with fruit, cheese, eggs, meat, fish, milk, hot drinks, and nightshades. Nightshades are things like tomatoes and eggplant and white potatoes and some peppers as well. We're going to cover nightshades next. Nightshades do not combine well with melon, cucumber, or dairy products. And raw foods do not combine well with cooked foods. So if you're having some raw, which we know are not great for Kapha or Vata, but if it's the height of summer and you want a salad, you're best to eat raw alone and not to combine it with cooked foods. And then finally, honey. Honey should never be cooked according to Ayurveda, as it affects the molecules when it's heated up. And these molecules then can produce toxins, which can affect the body. So that's your food combo chart. I know it's very eye-opening, because I'm sure there's some foods that you're like, oh my goodness, I have that combination on a regular basis and I have no problem. But again, really just tuning in now and seeing how you feel after that food combination. And I really invite you to draw awareness on how you feel after you eat your meals, especially if it was an incompatible combination. You can print this page and put it on your fridge, and just drawing awareness. So that's my whole episode on advice on what you should eat, on taste and food combining. I'm going to put those charts in a download, get the link in the show notes, and that's there for you. You can also go to my website, elementshealingandwellbeing.com, and under the freebies section, you'll see all the downloads from the episode. Thanks again for tuning in. I hope you're enjoying this information. If there's something that you want to hear more of, if you have feedback, please go over to the Elements of Ayurveda podcast group, the Facebook group, and you can join that and ask questions there, give me feedback, make suggestions about what you want covered on the show. I really would love to hear from you. So I'll put a link to that Facebook group in the show notes.
And finally, before I finish up here, I just want to remind you of my upcoming Daily Habits for a Holistic Health course starting May 10th, 2018. It's a 4-week online course, and this course will help you build a foundation of self-care practices that are in tune with the circadian rhythms, helping you to feel balanced, energetic, have a great health, and feeling inspired for life. So if you're ready to set those healthy self-care habits in place, please just check out the link in the show notes. Also in the show notes, you'll find the links to your downloads from this episode, and you'll find the link to the Elements of Ayurveda podcast group. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate you listening and your support. If you'd like to leave a rating and review, I would truly appreciate it. And please feel free to share the episodes with your friends and family. Until next time, take good care of yourself.